Well, brace yourselves, because the UK could have the hottest ever day today.
It's been the hottest July day on record here in the United Kingdom.
We all know that it's hot, but it is getting hotter.
It's been a very hot day, of course.
We've had a lot of hot weather, of course.
This is extreme heat.
The sweltering heat wave.
With the mercury reaching 37.7 degrees Celsius. It's also the hottest day of the year so far.
Well, it follows a similarly extreme heat wave in Europe in June. Weather experts have said today this all bears the hallmark of climate change. So will Boris Johnson's vision for Britain include bolder commitments on the environment? Our international editor, Gabriel Gatehouse, is here. Gabriel, first of all, what about the temperatures today? And is there an emphatic link to climate change?
Well, what the experts always say is that you can't prove a link to climate change to any individual specific event because heat waves occur naturally, but that increased CO2 in the atmosphere increases the likelihood and severity of extreme weather events like this heat wave. And a Met Office study, I think it was last year, concluded the UK was now 30 times more likely to experience heat waves than in the year 1750. Because of more CO2 in the atmosphere. So let's just have a look at the temperatures, because it wasn't just Britain. If we can look at the map, so that's 38.1 degrees centigrade in Cambridge in the UK, but then we had 42.6 in Paris. That was a record broken there, not in the south of France, but in Paris. The Netherlands, 40.7, that was a record broken, and then a little further east in Germany, 41.5. That was breaking a record that had already been broken again yesterday. So we're seeing this all over Europe, and this is after a heat wave that occurred there only last month.
So tell me, we have a new Prime Minister, and do we know what his stance is really on climate change?
Well, I mean, when he was Mayor of London, right, he projected a green image. He was all about cycling, it was the hybrid buses. But then there's the actions, his famous pledge to lie down in front of the bulldozers to stop the Heathrow third runway. He dodged that question again in Parliament today. In his acceptance speech for the Tory party leadership, he didn't mention the words environment or climate once, and that angered those Greenpeace protesters. And if you remember, they blocked his passage down the Mall to go and see the Queen. When he made his first speech outside number 10, he chastised the doomsters and gloomsters, as he put it, and he did mention the environment, but in a typically Boris Johnson kind of way, optimistic, entrepreneurial. He said Britain would lead the way in battery technology that could help cut CO2, and it was a theme that he returned to in the House of Commons earlier today.
We will be the home of electric vehicles, cars, even planes, powered by British-made battery technology, being developed right here, right now.
The trouble is, this is a bit of a kipper moment because Britain isn't actually a global leader in battery technology. Yes, a Brit, John Goodenough, did invent the technology for lithium-ion batteries back in 1980, but he's since moved to the United States. Theresa May's government in 2017 announced £246 million investment for battery research, but that investment has been dwarfed not only by the US and China, but also by the likes of France and Germany. It's hyperbole or a kipper moment, depending. I mean, it's the details. It's the details.
It's the details.
But look, more broadly, in the House today, he did commit to Theresa May's commitment about reducing the UK to net zero emissions by 2050. His record on voting is mixed. He's voted against carbon capture and for taxes on green energy sources, but he has criticised Donald Trump for withdrawing from the Paris Climate Agreement. In 2015, up until 2015, he was still writing articles that were broadly climate change sceptical. And really interestingly, if you look at his donations for his leadership campaign, one donation of £25,000 comes from First Corporate Shipping Limited, whose director is Terence Mordaunt, who's also on the board of the Global Warming Policy Forum. That's Nigel Lawson's outfit, which is the most high-profile climate-denying think tank in the UK.
Well, maybe you'll be giving it back tomorrow morning. Thank you very much indeed, Gabriel. Now to discuss the science behind the heat wave and whether the government is really on track for net zero emissions by 2050, I'm joined by Michael Grubb, Professor of Energy and Climate Change at UCL. Good evening. Thanks very much for coming in. You know, we just heard just now, but Boris can put plenty of energy into what he's actually saying, but has he got the record?
Well, I have to agree with your correspondent. I don't have a clue. I work in this space. I really do not know which of the various versions of Boris Johnson to believe. He, particularly given some of the background that would, earlier background, I think we have to wait and see. But I think the key thing is he has fairly firmly nailed his colours to the mast of a legally binding commitment he backed only last month, which is to get to net zero. And that is a legally binding commitment, but you still say, well, how's it going to be delivered? Will he do what's required to deliver it? And how does it sit with a wider theme of his prime ministership?
And how does he deliver it? Does he have to do more than what's been done so far?
Oh, no question. He has to do more than what's been done before.
And yet that's not necessarily a priority for this incoming government.
You might say they have one or two other distractions. But the kinds of things at home need to be done. Clearly, we should be moving to new build homes being net zero, with solar cells, with heat pumps that can also cool in summer as well as warm efficiently in winter. It should be banning internal combustion engines on the timescale the Climate Change Committee recommended.
But here there's a big dilemma, isn't there? Because what he wants to go for is economic growth. We're going to be super productive and so forth.
Yeah.
But business has got a problem because so much of business is mired in old technologies. Even our car industry is not as good in terms of development of electric cars as in other countries of the European Union, I might say.
Well, I mean, there are always winners and losers in transitions. Today we heard him trying to talk up the promise of batteries, and it's also true. We're not really leading in that area. The UK has managed to catch up in the area of offshore wind. So there's some areas. But broadly, we've made progress in the electricity sector, ironically, partly because it was nested in European rules, which cemented in law the commitments to renewable energy, which then drove the technology and cost reductions. So you just don't know at the moment how serious it's going to be. And it's set in this very difficult context. We're connected to Europe by pipes and wires. We ain't going to build pipes and wires to the US or to China on the grounds that we can trade energy better. So there's real dilemmas. Our energy system depends on good European relations. So again, you get this sense that over the last month we see politics driving us in inconsistent directions. We're going to lead the world on low carbon. We're going to really great business opportunities. Low carbon technologies will spread, but actually we're drawing up the drawbridge and a no deal would seriously disrupt relations on climate and energy with the EU. So there's problems and we wait to see how they're resolved.
Grubb, thank you very much for joining us.